So now it's just full on recording right now. So, and I'll just edit it down to make it look right. But anyways, so can you just give us another introduction of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. Do you want me to start right now?
Yeah.
Okay. My name's Fabian. I've been writing comics for 5 years. Yeah.
Okay. And when was your first comic released?
This was the fall of 2010. I self-published a black and white first issue of a werewolf comic. And yeah, I fell in love with it and wanted to just keep making more and more comics.
Awesome. What is your creative process when you're developing new stories and characters?
Mostly I just try and think of what I feel like reading. Um, if I feel like reading a monster story, I'll make up, a monster, or I'll go to a monster that, I feel like reading a vampire story or whatever. So I'll make up, that's usually how it starts off.
Mm-hmm.
I think like what I feel like reading. A lot of the time, if I'm working with an artist, their art will like inspire me. But yeah, I mostly just think like, man, I feel like reading something like this, and so I kind of just make it up.
Okay. Do you ever bring in like your own personal experiences into your writing?
Yeah, I have before. There's been some times where, I'm like, oh, this reminds me of something that happened to me, or I'll have a character tell a story that actually happened to me, or a variation of something that happened to me. Um, but yeah, for the most part, I mostly just make it up.
Okay. What about your characters? As far as when you're developing a new character for a story, um,
uh,
is it based off of just where you want to, like what kind of, like if it's a monster or if it's a vampire, or is it mostly based off like a collaboration with you and the artist of like what type of characters you're going to be writing and developing like dialogue for?
um, it's like a mixture of both. Comics are very collaborative,
Mm-hmm.
and I've actually been lucky enough to have artists, um, hit me up and say, I have these characters, but I'm not a writer. Like if I send you these characters, can you like develop a story with them, develop their personality and stuff like that?
Sure.
Uh, Mostly, I just try and think of like, like what personality traits would bounce off another character. If I have one character that hates the cold,
Mm-hmm.
then I'll have another character who loves the cold, and kind of see the conflict that that'll kind of like bounce off each other and stuff.
Okay. When you're beginning to write a new story, do you use any pre-writing strategies such as organization or structure to help you develop the story?
Yeah, I have lots of notebooks. I've got right now. I'm looking at 4 different notebooks. Um, it depends on the story length. If I know it's going to be, it's just a short story, like 8 pages or something, um, I'll just write out page 1, page 2, all the way to page 8, and kind of figure out, what needs to happen on each page. Mostly, I'll just write like a general idea at first. Like you know, spaceship lands on alien planet, and then I just kind of go from there and like figure out. Uh,
That sort of
what,
sets up your scene.
yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. Then usually, even after I do like the page by page breakdown, that's kind of where I like trim the fat. Like okay, this needs to be cut if I'm going to make it this long or whatever,
Sure.
um, or this needs to be longer. Like I didn't realize this was going to take longer than I thought. Stuff like that. There's some editing involved.
Yeah. And how important is it to include like sensory detail and figurative language in your writing?
Um, well, with comics, it's a little different because it's like visual.
Yeah.
Like the whole thing is visual.
Yeah, of course.
uh,
That's
a
a
lot of times, I just let. There are some times where I just let the art tell the story.
yeah.
A rule of thumb is where it's like when you're writing comics, it's like could someone pick a comic up and read it without, say they couldn't read, they couldn't read.
Yeah.
Like, would they see able to put that story together by the pictures? And so when I'm telling the artist what to draw, I'm keeping in mind, can this, would someone be able to tell what's going on in the story just by looking at it?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's like visual cues and stuff like that. And dialogue, that's just like icing on the cake.
Yeah. It just sort of sweetens the story with strong dialogue between the characters. And when you're developing your stories, are you usually waiting for the art to come in first, or do you write the characters, like the story and like the plot and like rising action and all those other different things before you even have the artwork? Or is
Yeah,
it sort of a process where you guys are bouncing ideas back and forth off each other?
Usually, if there's any art that I've seen before, it's usually just a couple of character designs.
Okay.
That's if I'm collaborating with an artist. Um, a lot of times I hire an artist just to draw, what I've written, and yeah, a lot of the time I just kind of tell them, what's going to happen and stuff like that.
Okay. And then for your process of writing a new comic, about how long does it take you to actually have a final product where it's ready to be published and such?
Well, that usually depends. If it's just going to be like a short story that I'm going to do myself, it could be done, in a couple weeks.
Okay.
It really just depends on how much free time I have.
Yeah.
I do have a day job.
Yeah.
It's something I do for fun. I do get paid to do it, but yeah, it's just like extra income, and it's more like a creative outlet.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then a lot of the stuff that I'm working on now, I do have editors that have to go through what I'm writing and kind of like, let's strengthen this a little bit, or let's go ahead and take this out. It's not always like stuff like that. A lot of times they're just like, oh, this is really good. You did a good job right here.
Sure.
I think it's gotta be they gotta have some good stuff with some bad stuff.
Yeah.
So for the most part, it's just it just helps strengthen the story. I guess it doesn't really take me very long. I mean, writing is a lot. It's a lot faster than the art.
Yeah.
An art, can take up to a whole day doing one page, wherein I could write like 3 pages in like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Or an hour or something.
And I mean, I'm assuming that obviously since you have such a strong passion for writing, it comes sort of naturally to you when you're developing these stories and characters.
Yeah. I kind of thought that everybody could do it
Yeah.
when I was a kid. Like when I was in school, my teacher gave us like a creative writing class or a project. It was a Halloween story. It was around Halloween time. She was like, "Okay, we're gonna make up a Halloween story," and a lot of the kids wrote like a page-long story or like half a page.
Yeah.
And I needed 5 pages. And
Sure.
that was kind of where she was like, "Oh, this is something that you're good at," and it was like the first thing that I was like, "Whoa, okay, I didn't know I was good at something."
Yeah. Something to be proud about.
Yeah. I always just thought I was good at making jokes and